Hi, this is a video that's going to help you with Session 7, Quiz 1. We'll give you some hints here, and let's start with question number 1. Now, again, this chapter goes over the labor market, and question number 1 says, which of the following statements best illustrates the economic concept of derived demand? So, in this topic, I went over two types of demand. There was one type of demand that we're used to. That's the supply and demand curve that we went over in chapter 3. I introduced a new type of demand called a derived demand. And this is a demand that comes from the demand of another good. So that's the word derived. Derived meaning come from someplace else. So which of these four things do you think is a demand that comes from another source of demand? Let's go to question number 2. So which of the following are considered examples of human capital? If you remember in chapter 1, we went over the factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Now, capital, when it comes to factors of production, was what we called physical capital. That's the type of capital that's machinery, goods used to produce other goods. We also briefly talked about money capital. That's like financing. But in this chapter, we introduced a third type of capital called human capital. That has to do with the value of labor. Think about what determines your value in the labor market. Your physical condition, that's one determining value. Another determining value is your skill, your education and training. Now, education and training is what adds to human capital. Think of human capital as skills by workers. That should help you with that one. For question number 3, which of the following arguments best explains the high pay for actor Tom Cruise? So in this chapter, we talked about what determines workers' value. And one of the things that we talked about is their marginal revenue product. That's the amount of money that they add to the revenues of a company. So if you add a lot of revenue to a company, you are adding a lot. You have high marginal revenue product. Basically, Tom Cruise is an actor. He gets paid a lot of money, and so these 5 things say something about what makes a particular person paid more than others, but only one of them has to do with an actor. So let's see I hope that helps. Now for questions 4 and 5, we have this graphic here, and this is a labor supply curve and labor demand curve. And on the vertical axis we have wages, and on the horizontal axis we have number of people employed, in this case dishwashers. So the graph above shows labor supply and labor demand for dishwashers in San Francisco in absence of a minimum wage. So this right here, $6 an hour, that is the market wage. So question number 4 says, initially the labor market is in equilibrium, but after a minimum wage is imposed, employment falls by 20 workers. What is the value of the minimum wage? So right now the market wage is $6 an hour, and you could see how many people are employed. Well, if we employ a minimum wage and only 40 workers are employed, I'm sorry, not 40 workers, 20 workers. So I'm sorry, but the minimum wage is imposed and employment falls by 20 workers. So start at 40. If employment falls by 20, that means demand falls by 20. So remember, this demand is the demand by firms. They want 40 workers at a price of $6. What happens if this falls by 20? You should be able to determine the new wage, which will be the minimum wage. And number 5, for which of the following wages would there be a shortage of 20 dishwashers? So use your supply and demand here. Start at equilibrium, and at what wage do you see a shortage of 20? If you review chapter 3, that could help too. Look at prices where there are shortages, and you should be able to answer this. Okay, so that's questions 1 through 5. The next video is going to help you with questions 6 through 10.